The night sky above the alien jungle shimmered with two moons, one pale and the other glowing red. The dense forest was alive with strange noises, hissing, growling, and the rustle of creatures moving through the shadows. Sergeant Daniel Cross adjusted the grip on his plasma rifle as he moved slowly through the undergrowth. His boots sank into the damp moss and the thick air pressed down on him like a weight. He was far from Earth, light years away, stranded on a world that was never meant for humans. He had been separated from his squad during the ambush. The enemy drones had attacked out of nowhere, scattering his unit across the forest. Daniel had barely escaped with his life. Now he was alone, tired, and wounded. His arm burned where shrapnel had torn through his armor. Every sound made his nerves twitch. He knew this planet was crawling with predators, some intelligent, some not, and none of them friendly. As he pushed past the ferns, he froze. Two glowing eyes were staring at him from the shadows ahead. They were not the cold red of drones or the empty black of beasts. These eyes glowed gold, sharp, and alive. He raised his rifle slowly, trying not to make a sound. The eyes did not blink. They narrowed as if studying him, judging him. Then from the shadows a figure stepped forward. It was tall, taller than him by a head, with a body covered in dark fur that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Muscles rippled beneath the fur, and sharp claws caught the glow of the red moon. But it was not a mindless beast. Its shape was humanoid, and its face, though fierce with fangs and a long muzzle, held something more: intelligence. Daniel's heart pounded. He kept his rifle aimed, but his hands trembled. The creature tilted its head, golden eyes fixed on him, then spoke. Its voice was rough but clear, a strange mix of growl and human speech. "If you keep staring," it said, "I'll pounce." Daniel blinked. His mind raced. He had expected an attack, not words. The creature stepped closer, and he could see now that it was female. Her form was powerful, almost regal, though wild and dangerous. She looked like something out of a nightmare, yet her voice carried an odd sharpness, like she was daring him. She stopped a few steps away, standing tall, her breathing deep and steady. Daniel noticed something then. Her leg was bent awkwardly, and a long black thorn was stuck deep into her thigh. Dark blood glistened around the wound. The creature followed, his gaze, and growled. "Now hurry," she hissed, baring her fangs, "and pull the thorn out." Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He did not lower his rifle, but his eyes locked on hers. Was this a trap? If he moved closer, would she kill him? Yet the pain in her voice was real, the blood undeniable. Her muscles twitched as if she could leap at him at any second, but her leg betrayed her. "You can talk?" he muttered. Her lips curled into something that was not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. "Better than you, human. Now do it. Before I decide, I don't need your help." The jungle seemed to close in around them. Strange shapes moved in the distance, and the cries of hunting beasts echoed through the night. Daniel knew he didn't have time. His survival depended on choices, and this one felt heavier than any he had made before. He could walk away, leave her to bleed out, and maybe escape alone. Or he could risk everything, step closer, and trust that this alien beast woman would not tear him apart the moment he touched her. Slowly, he lowered his rifle. Her golden eyes followed the movement, unblinking, unreadable. "You're crazy," Daniel whispered under his breath. He slung the rifle across his back and took a cautious step forward. The alien growled low in her throat, warning him not to test her patience. The thorn was long, buried deep into her flesh. He could see the muscles, tense around it, fighting against the pain. As he reached out, his hands trembling, she leaned down closer, her hot breath brushing against his face. "One wrong move," she whispered, her fangs glinting, "and I'll crush your bones." Daniel swallowed hard, his fingers wrapped around the thorn. He could feel the strange material. It wasn't wood or metal, but something harder, alien, almost alive. Her leg quivered under his touch. The jungle went silent, as if the world itself was waiting for what would happen next. And then Daniel pulled. The thorn slid free with a sickening sound, black blood spilling down her leg. Daniel stumbled back, holding the strange object in his hand. It pulsed faintly, almost like it was alive before crumbling to dust in his palm. His stomach turned, but before he could react, a roar tore from the alien beastwoman's throat. She staggered forward, her claws digging into the dirt, and for a heartbeat Daniel thought she was going to kill him. Then, just as suddenly, she straightened. The golden glow in her eyes flared, sharp and fierce. She took a long breath, the muscles in her thigh twitching as the wound began to close with unnatural speed. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Her breathing steadied. Daniel froze, his back against a tree. He still didn't know if he had saved her or just freed something much worse. His rifle hung at his side, but his instincts screamed that aiming it now would be suicide. She looked at him, her fangs still glistening in the moonlight. "You should have run," she said quietly, almost like a warning. Daniel clenched his jaw. "And leave you to die? That's not what humans do." For a long moment she just stared, the gold in her eyes softened, though her posture remained sharp, ready to strike. She tilted her head, studying him as if he were some strange puzzle. Finally, she let out a low growl, not of anger, but something closer to amusement. "Strange," she muttered. "Most would let me bleed. You did not." Daniel's grip tightened on his rifle. "Yeah, well, I've seen enough death already." The silence stretched. The jungle hummed with distant growls and clicks, predators moving through the trees. The night was alive, and every sound reminded Daniel how fragile his life was here. The beastwoman turned her head suddenly, ears twitching. Her eyes narrowed. "They're coming." Daniel tensed. "Who?" "Hunters." Her voice dropped into a snarl. "Not beasts. Worse." She moved quickly, grabbing his arm with a grip that felt like iron. Daniel tried to pull back, but her strength was overwhelming. She leaned close, her fangs inches from his face. "If you want to live, you follow me. Do not argue. Do not fall behind." Before Daniel could respond, she pulled him into the shadows, moving faster than his eyes could follow. Her injured leg no longer slowed her. Whatever strange power healed her had already restored her strength. He stumbled, barely keeping up, the jungle whipping against his face as they rushed through vines and branches. Behind them, Daniel heard it, the metallic whir of drones and the pounding footsteps of armored pursuers. His heart leapt into his throat. It was the same enemy force that had ambushed his squad. Somehow they had tracked him here. "Wait, stop!" Daniel gasped as they ducked behind a fallen log. "If they're after me, why are they after you, too?" The beastwoman's golden eyes flashed. "Because I killed one of their commanders." Daniel blinked, stunned. "You... what?" Her lips curled back, showing fangs in something between a grin and a snarl. "I told you, I am no prey, and neither are you, human." The sound of footsteps grew louder. Red searchlights cut through the trees. Daniel pressed himself low against the log, his pulse racing. He could see 3 drones hovering just above the canopy, their sensors sweeping the jungle. He gripped his rifle, finger trembling on the trigger. The beastwoman crouched beside him, her breath steady, her muscles tense. She looked at him once, then whispered, "You will shoot only when I tell you, understand?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. He had no reason to trust her, but somehow in this moment her presence felt like the only thing keeping him alive. The hunters appeared, armored soldiers, tall and faceless behind sleek helmets. Their weapons glowed faintly in the moonlight. They moved in formation, scanning every direction. Daniel counted at least 6 of them. He knew he couldn't take them alone. The beastwoman leaned close, her golden eyes burning. "When I move, you fire. Do not miss." Daniel swallowed hard. "And if I do?" Her lips brushed his ear as she growled, "Then I pounce. On them, or on you." Before he could reply, she leapt from cover with a roar that shook the trees. The hunters spun, their weapons rising, but she was already among them. Her claws slashed through metal like paper, tearing through armor, sparks flying. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He rose from behind the log and fired, plasma bolts slamming into the soldiers who tried to flank her. The jungle lit with fire and fury, the air filled with the screams of dying men and the hiss of burning machines. Daniel fought with everything he had, his heart pounding, his body moving on instinct. Every time he thought she would be overwhelmed, the Beastwoman tore another enemy apart, her speed and strength terrifying to watch. She was a storm, a predator beyond anything he had seen, and yet, she fought beside him, not against him. Within minutes, the clearing was silent again. The hunters lay broken, smoke rising from their shattered armor. Daniel stood panting, his rifle hot in his hands, his chest heaving. The Beastwoman wiped black blood from her claws and turned to him. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever. "Not bad, human," she said softly. "Perhaps you are more than prey after all." Daniel tried to steady his breath. "And you're not just a beast." For the first time, she almost smiled. But before he could say more, the trees around them shuddered. A low rumble echoed through the ground. The air grew colder. Both of them turned toward the sound. Something far bigger was coming. The ground shook again, harder this time. Leaves trembled, branches cracked, and somewhere in the distance trees fell like matchsticks. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. Whatever was coming was not just another patrol of hunters. This was heavier, larger, something built to crush anything in its path. The Beastwoman's golden eyes narrowed as she sniffed the air, her fur bristling. She dropped low to the ground, every muscle tense, her claws digging into the soil. For the first time since Daniel met her, he saw hesitation flicker across her face. "What is it?" Daniel whispered, his rifle tight in his grip. Her jaw clenched. "War machine. They unleashed it sooner than I thought." "A machine? Like a tank?" Her gaze flicked to him. "No. Worse. A beast they remade with steel and rage. Half creature, half machine. They keep it caged until they want entire forests burned." Daniel's throat went dry. His squad hadn't faced anything like that. He had seen drones, armored soldiers, but not that. He looked down at the cooling bodies of the hunters around them, then back at her. "And how do we stop it?" Her lips curled in a grim snarl. "We don't, we survive it." The rumble turned into a thunderous crash as something massive moved through the jungle. Daniel saw flashes of metal between the trees, glowing red eyes scanning like searchlights. The ground split as a giant clawed limb, wrapped in steel plating, smashed down on a tree and sent it toppling. A guttural roar followed, deep and mechanical, shaking Daniel's bones. "Move!" the Beastwoman barked. She grabbed his arm again and dragged him into the underbrush. Daniel stumbled after her, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to run faster. Behind them, the sound grew louder. Trees breaking, engines whining, claws tearing. He dared a glance over his shoulder and saw it. A monstrous figure crashing through the forest, taller than any building he'd known back on Earth. Its body was a nightmare, metal fused with flesh. Its chest glowed with a furnace-like light, and its face was a twisted skull of bone and steel, jaws dripping fire. Daniel couldn't breathe. "That's impossible." "It hunts by heat and sound," she growled, her voice low. "Keep still when I tell you, or you will die before you scream." They dove into a thicket as the machine beast thundered past, shaking the ground with each step. Daniel tried to control his breathing, but his chest heaved with panic. The Beastwoman crouched close, one clawed hand pressed to his shoulder, forcing him still. Her hot breath brushed his ear. "Do not move." The machine stopped. Its head turned slowly, scanning. A red beam of light swept over the forest floor, passing just inches from Daniel's face. He shut his eyes tight, praying it wouldn't notice him. He could feel her claws tense on his shoulder, ready to strike if she had to, seconds stretched into forever. Then, with a metallic snarl, the monster stomped away, crashing deeper into the jungle. Daniel finally exhaled. His whole body trembled. "We can't outrun that thing forever." The Beastwoman rose, her golden eyes glowing fierce in the moonlight. We don't outrun it, we lead it. Lead it? To where? She pointed with a claw toward the mountains rising faintly in the distance. There are caves, ancient ones, too narrow for its bulk. If we reach them, we live. Daniel's stomach twisted. That mountain ridge looked miles away, but he nodded. Then we move. They set off again, this time side by side. Daniel's boots slipped in the mud, his arm burning with pain from his old wound, but he forced himself forward. The Beastwoman moved with the grace of a predator, every step powerful and precise. For a while, neither spoke. The jungle whispered with danger, every sound reminding Daniel of the hunters who had died, the monster stalking behind them. But as they pushed forward, he found his eyes drawn to her. Her strength, her presence, the strange, wild dignity in the way she carried herself. Finally, he broke the silence. You said you killed one of their commanders. She glanced at him, eyes sharp. Yes. Why? Was it revenge? Her voice was low, almost heavy. It was survival. They came to my territory. They burned it. They slaughtered my kin. I tore their leader apart with my claws. Daniel felt a pang in his chest. He had lost his squad, but she had lost far more. He looked down at his rifle. So we're both alone now. Her gaze lingered on him a moment longer before she turned away. Not alone. Not anymore. The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He swallowed and pushed on, the bond between them tightening in the silence. But the ground trembled again. The machine beast was following, closing the distance. Its roar echoed through the jungle, and Daniel felt the hairs on his neck rise. The beast woman's claws flexed. It knows where we are. Daniel gripped his rifle tighter. Then we fight? Her golden eyes burned as she looked at him. No, not yet. We make it follow us into the mountains, then we fight together. The red glow of the machine's eyes pierced the trees behind them, closer than before. The hunt was far from over. The night grew darker as clouds drifted across the moons, and the jungle seemed to twist into a maze around them. Daniel's breath came in sharp bursts, sweat mixing with dirt on his face as he ran beside the beast woman. Every step was a fight against exhaustion. But the sound behind them, metal claws crushing trees, engines roaring, fire spilling from a monstrous throat, kept him moving. The beast woman moved ahead, her body low, muscles tense, golden eyes glowing, like lanterns in the dark. Every so often she stopped, sniffed the air, and adjusted their path. Daniel realized she wasn't just running blindly. She was guiding them through trails only she knew, weaving around patches of ground that might slow them, avoiding paths where the monster's weight had already broken trees into splinters. Still, the noise behind them never faded. It was always there, steady, hunting. Daniel clenched his jaw. It's not giving up. It won't, she growled, her voice sharp as claws. Once it locks on, it hunts until blood is spilled. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. Yours, or mine? She shot him a glance, her lips curling into something fierce. Both. For a moment, neither spoke again. The only sounds were their footsteps, their breathing, and the distant thunder of pursuit. Daniel's legs ached, his arms still burned. But when he glanced at her, he found strength in her unshaken pace. She was a predator, yes, but she was also his guide, his ally. Somehow, without meaning to, he trusted her. They burst through a clearing, where the trees thinned, the moonlight spilling silver across the ground. Daniel staggered to a halt, his chest heaving, and pointed ahead. The mountains here, they're closer. Jagged peaks loomed against the horizon, their edges sharp and black against the sky. But between them and safety stretched a wide valley, open ground with no cover. The beast woman hissed low in her throat. It will see us if we cross. Daniel scanned the valley. The ground was littered with broken stone and tall grass that waved like whispers in the wind. Then what? Stay here and wait for it to catch us? Her golden eyes narrowed. She crouched, claws digging into the dirt as she thought. Finally, she turned to him, her voice quiet but firm. We make it chase us, straight into the cliffs. Once it is trapped between the rocks, we strike together. Daniel's stomach twisted. Strike? Against that thing? You saw what it did to the forest. Her gaze locked onto his. And you saw what I did to their soldiers. Do you doubt me, human? Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. No, I don't. She tilted her head, studying him with something, almost like respect. Then trust me. Fight when I say fight. Live when I say live. Before he could answer, the forest behind them exploded. Trees toppled like toys as the machine beast tore into the clearing, its massive frame bathed in firelight. Its eyes glowed red, scanning, locking onto them instantly. The roar that followed rattled Daniel's bones. Run! The Beastwoman snapped. They bolted across the valley, their shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Daniel's boots pounded, the earth, his lungs burning, every step feeling like it might be his last. Behind them, the monster thundered after, faster than he expected, each stride shaking the ground like an earthquake. A blast of fire roared past, igniting the grass around them. Heat seared Daniel's face as he stumbled forward, nearly falling. The Beastwoman grabbed his arm, yanking him upright, never slowing her pace. Don't stop! She barked. Daniel gritted his teeth and pushed harder. The mountains grew closer. The jagged cliffs now looming above them, their dark mouths of caves visible against the stone. Hope sparked in his chest, but it was chased quickly by fear as the ground trembled again. The monster was gaining. Almost. There, Daniel shouted, though his voice broke with strain. The Beastwoman snarled, baring her fangs. No shouting, it hears you. They dove into a narrow cut between two cliffs, just as another blast of fire scorched the valley floor. The rock walls around them funneled the sound of the beast's roar, amplifying it until the air shook. Daniel pressed himself against the stone, gasping for breath, his rifle clutched tight. The Beastwoman crouched low, her eyes gleaming in the dark. It cannot fit all the way inside, she whispered. Here, it is slower. We strike from above. Daniel frowned. Above? She pointed up at the jagged rocks lining the cliffside. The stone is loose. If it follows, we bring the mountain down on its head. Daniel's gaze followed hers, and he saw it. The cracks, the boulders perched dangerously above, waiting for the right push. His heart pounded. That might work. Her claws flexed, scraping against stone. It will. But you must distract it long enough for me to climb. Daniel's stomach dropped. Me? Her eyes burned gold, fierce and unyielding. Yes, you carry the fire. Use it. Daniel looked down at his rifle, his hands trembling. He wasn't sure he could face the monster alone, not even for a moment. But then he looked at her. This Beastwoman who had trusted him to pull a thorn from her flesh, who had fought beside him against hunters, who now planned to risk her life to save his. He tightened his grip on the rifle. Fine. I'll keep it. Busy. The ground shook again as the monster appeared at the mouth of the cliffs, its massive head forcing its way into the narrow gap, its jaws dripping fire. The sight made Daniel's blood run cold. The Beastwoman leaned close, her voice a growl in his ear. Do not die, human. Not until I say so. And with that, she leapt upward, scaling the cliff with terrifying speed, her claws digging into stone, as if it were nothing. Daniel was left below, staring at the nightmare forcing its way closer. He raised his rifle, his finger on the trigger, and swallowed hard. All right, he whispered. Let's dance. The monster forced its way deeper into the canyon, stone grinding against its armored shoulders. Sparks flew as steel scraped rock, the noise so loud Daniel's ears rang. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him, and its furnace chest lit brighter with every breath. Daniel's hands trembled on his rifle, but he stood his ground. He fired. Plasma bolts slammed into its armored hide, leaving only scorched marks. The beast didn't even slow. It roared, the sound a mix of metal and flesh, then lunged forward, its clawed arm smashing into the cliff wall where Daniel had stood a moment before. Daniel rolled aside, dust choking his lungs, stones cutting his skin. He scrambled to his feet and fired again, aiming for the glowing joints in its armor. This time sparks flew, and the monster staggered slightly, more from irritation than pain. Above, the Beastwoman climbed higher, her claws ripping into the stone as she moved like a shadow. She glanced down at Daniel, her eyes sharp, calculating. She could see the monster's focus locked on him, giving her the chance to move unseen along the cliffside. Daniel shouted, his voice echoing in the canyon. "Come on! You want me? I'm right here!" The monster roared, blasting a jet of fire from its jaws. Daniel dove behind a boulder as flames washed over the stone, heat searing his skin even through his armor. The rock glowed red where the fire touched, and for a moment he thought it would melt. He coughed, sweat dripping into his eyes, and forced himself up again. He couldn't stop. If he stopped, the Beastwoman's plan would fail, and they'd both die here. Just hold it. She whispered to herself as she crawled along a ledge. The stone above the monster's head groaned with each of its movements. Cracks spread wider. She dug her claws into the rock, testing the boulders. One hard push at the right moment, and the mountain would fall. The war beast turned suddenly, its red gaze sweeping upward as if sensing her movement. Daniel's heart lurched. "No, no, no, look at me," he yelled, firing his rifle wildly, shots sparking against its chest. The creature swung its massive head back toward him and roared. Its clawed arm smashed forward, shattering the boulder. He hid behind. Stone exploded around him, shards cutting into his face and arms. He was thrown to the ground, his rifle skidding across the dirt. Daniel groaned, pain stabbing through his ribs. He reached for the weapon, but the monster loomed above him, its furnace chest glowing brighter, preparing another blast of fire. High above, the Beastwoman snarled, "Not him! Me!" She launched herself from the ledge, landing on the monster's back with the force of a thunderbolt. Her claws tore into its armor, ripping through cables and sinew. The beast thrashed, slamming against the canyon walls to throw her off, but she clung tight, snarling with rage. Daniel rolled to his feet, grabbing his rifle. He saw her ripping into the creature, sparks flying, blood and oil spraying across the stone. She roared louder than the machine itself, a primal sound that made the ground shake. "Now, human!" she screamed. "Shoot the joints!" Daniel aimed, his vision blurred by sweat and blood. He squeezed the trigger, firing bolt after bolt into the beast's legs, hitting the glowing gaps in the armor. Each shot staggered it, slowing its movement, forcing it to stumble. The Beastwoman climbed higher on its back, reaching the boulders above. She dug her claws deep into the cracked stone and pushed with everything she had. The cliff groaned, the sound of breaking rock echoing through the canyon. "Daniel!" she roared. "Move!" His instinct screamed at him, and he dove to the ground just as the ledge above gave way. The mountainside collapsed. Boulders the size of houses crashed down onto the war beast, smashing into its back, its head, its furnace chest. The sound was deafening, a thunderous roar of stone crushing steel. Dust exploded upward, blinding Daniel as he covered his head. The ground shaking like the world itself was ending. When the dust began to clear, Daniel coughed and stumbled to his knees. The canyon floor was littered with shattered stone and twisted metal. The war beast lay crushed beneath the boulders, its furnace chest flickering weakly before sputtering out. Its red eyes dimmed, fading into darkness. Daniel staggered to his feet, his chest heaving. We did it." Movement above caught his eye. The Beastwoman dropped down from the cliff, landing heavily but steady. Her fur was matted with blood and dust, her claws slick with oil. She walked toward him, her golden eyes burning even, brighter than before. She stopped just a few steps away, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Then she bared her fangs, not in threat, but in something closer to a grin. "You fought well, human." Daniel let out a shaky laugh, though it came out more like a cough. "Yeah, not bad for prey, right?" Her grin widened, her golden eyes gleaming. "Not prey, partner." For the first time, Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest, stronger than fear, stronger than exhaustion. Against all odds, they had survived the impossible. But as he looked at her, at the canyon filled with rubble and the shattered war beast beneath it, He knew this was only the beginning, because if the enemy had unleashed such a monster already, worse was surely waiting. The canyon was silent except for the settling of rocks. Dust hung in the air like a heavy fog, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Daniel leaned against a boulder, his rifle hanging loose at his side, his chest aching with every breath. His ears still rang from the collapse, but the silence felt unreal after so much chaos. The war beast lay crushed beneath the mountain, its body twisted, its red eyes dark. The heat of its furnace chest faded, leaving only cold smoke that curled upward and vanished into the night. For the first time since the ambush, Daniel felt like he could breathe again. The beast woman crouched beside the wreckage, her claws scraping against the broken steel. She sniffed the air, then stood tall, her golden eyes narrowing. "It is dead," she said simply. Daniel gave a weak laugh, rubbing blood from his face. "Good. I was starting to think nothing could kill that thing." She turned her gaze on him, her expression unreadable. "Do not thank the mountain yet. That was only one weapon. They have more." Daniel's stomach twisted. The idea of more creatures like that, beasts remade with fire and steel, made his chest feel heavy. He tried to push it away. "Then we'll find a way to stop them too." The beast woman tilted her head, her golden eyes glinting. "You speak as though you are already part of my hunt." Daniel met her gaze, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "I saved you. You saved me. That makes us a team, doesn't it?" For a moment she said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Perhaps." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant cries of smaller creatures in the jungle. Daniel lowered himself onto a rock, his body aching all over. He could feel the exhaustion pulling at him, but he forced himself to stay awake. He looked at her again, studying her in the dim light. Her fur was torn in places. Blood, both hers and the monster's, clung to her claws, yet she stood tall and proud. She wasn't just a predator. She was something more. Fierce, intelligent, dangerous, yet strangely honorable. Finally, he asked, "What do I call you? You have a name, right?" Her ears twitched. For the first time, a flicker of hesitation passed over her face. "Names are for kin. Mine are gone." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't push further. Instead, he offered quietly, "Then maybe, I'll call you whatever name you want now." She studied him, her golden eyes glowing in the dark. At last she said, "Lyra." Daniel nodded. "Lyra." The name felt right, sharp yet strong, like her. She moved closer, crouching in front of him. Her gaze dropped to his arm, where blood seeped through the torn armor. Without warning, she grabbed his wrist. Daniel winced. "Easy," he muttered. Lyra ignored him, sniffing the wound before baring her fangs. "It is poisoned." Daniel froze. "What?" Her claws traced lightly along the torn flesh. "The shrapnel from their machines carries toxins. It spreads through blood. If left, you will be weak, then dead." Panic gripped Daniel's chest. "And what do I do about that?" Her golden eyes locked on his. "You let me take it out." Before he could ask what she meant, she leaned down and sank her fangs into his arm. Daniel shouted in shock, the pain burning white-hot as she bit deep, then pulled back. Dark blood spilled into her mouth, which she spat onto the ground. She growled low, then bit again, drawing more poisoned blood before spitting it out. Daniel's vision swam. His free hand dug into the dirt as he fought not to scream. "God, Lyra, stop." But she did not stop until the blood ran cleaner. Only then did she pull away, her muzzle dark, her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. She wiped her mouth with the back of her claw and hissed, "It is done. You will live." Daniel slumped against the rock, his entire body trembling. His arm throbbed, but the fire inside it had dulled. He looked at her in disbelief. "That was the worst medical treatment I've ever had." Lyra bared her fangs in what almost looked like a grin. "You are alive. That is enough." For a moment, they both stayed still, the weight of what just happened hanging between them. Strange as it was, Daniel felt something shift inside him, fear and mistrust giving way to something else. But the moment didn't last. The ground trembled, faintly, so faint Daniel almost thought it was his imagination. Lyra's ears twitched, her eyes snapped toward the horizon. "No," she growled. Daniel pushed himself upright, his body still weak. "What is it?" She pointed toward the distance, where the jungle stretched endless. Faint lights flickered in the night, dozens of them moving slowly but steadily toward the mountains. Daniel's stomach dropped. "More of them." Lyra's voice was cold, her claws flexing. "Not just more. An army." Daniel's grip tightened, on his rifle. His body ached, his heart pounded, but his voice came out steady. "Then we fight." Her golden eyes locked on his. "You do not understand. This was only the first storm. The war has just begun." And as the faint lights grew brighter in the distance, Daniel realized she was right. The nightmare was only getting started. The lights in the distance grew brighter, with every heartbeat. They were not torches, not fire. They were machines, cold red eyes glowing in the dark. Daniel counted dozens, maybe hundreds, all moving through the jungle like predators on the hunt. The ground trembled again, faint at first but steady, like the earth itself was marching toward them. The air smelled of smoke and iron. Daniel gripped, his rifle, his knuckles white. He was tired, his body aching from wounds, but he refused to let fear win. Lyra crouched low on the ridge beside him. Her golden eyes glowed as she tracked the movement below. Her claws scraped against stone, leaving shallow cuts. She did not look at Daniel when she spoke. "You can still run. They do not know you. They only want me." Daniel almost laughed. "Run where? Back into the jungle? Alone?" He shook his head. "If I leave, they'll kill you. And if they kill you, I'm next anyway." At last she turned to him. Her sharp face was unreadable, but her eyes held something strange. Not pity, not scorn, something closer to respect. "You are reckless," she said softly. "But maybe that is why you live." Before Daniel could answer, the first machine beast broke through the trees. Its metal body was stitched with living flesh, claws glinting, chest glowing faintly with furnace fire. Then another followed, then 5 more, until the jungle seemed alive with steel monsters. The army was real. Daniel raised his rifle, the barrel, shaking. "We can't fight all of them." Lyra straightened to her full height, her muscles tense, her claws flexing. "No, but we do not need to." She pointed toward the ridge above them, where jagged rocks hung loose. "One strike and the mountain falls again. Enough to bury the front lines, enough to buy us time." Daniel's eyes followed her hand. It was risky, maybe impossible, but it was their only chance. He nodded. "Then let's do it." The first wave of beasts charged, their claws tearing through stone as they climbed the canyon wall. Daniel fired, his rifle cracking again and again, sparks flying as bullets tore into steel and flesh. One beast fell, shrieking, its furnace chest sparking before it went dark. Another leapt and landed so close he could smell its burning breath. Lyra slammed into it, her claws ripping deep into its throat until it collapsed in a heap. "Move!" she roared, her voice echoing in the canyon. Daniel scrambled up the ridge, his boots slipping on loose rock. The beasts clawed after him faster than he could climb. One leapt, its jaws snapping shut inches from his leg. Daniel spun and fired point blank into its eye, the force knocking it back down the slope. Lyra bounded past him, her claws digging into stone as she climbed with inhuman speed. She reached the weak ridge first, her golden eyes glowing with fury. "Now!" she shouted. Daniel planted his rifle, aimed high, and fired at the unstable rocks. The cracks spread like spiderwebs. The ground shook as Lyra leapt and slammed her, claws into the fractures. With a roar, the ridge broke free. An avalanche of stone thundered down the slope, crashing into the advancing army. The beasts below shrieked as boulders smashed into them, crushing metal and bone alike. The earth trembled, dust rising like smoke, swallowing the front lines in chaos. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for air. His rifle was empty. His body felt like it was made of lead. But the canyon below was choked with rubble, the glowing red eyes of the beasts buried beneath. Only a few scattered survivors clawed at the stones, but the army was broken. For now. Lyra stood tall on the ridge, her chest heaving, her golden eyes scanning the battlefield. She looked like a predator, victorious, unbroken. Then she turned to Daniel, her gaze softening just slightly. "You fight as if you were born to my clan," she said quietly. Daniel gave a weak laugh, pushing himself to his feet. "Guess that makes me an honorary beast, huh?" For the first time, her lips curled into something almost like a smile. "Perhaps." The night grew still again. The jungle whispered in the distance, the cries of smaller creatures returning slowly. But the silence felt fragile, like glass, that could shatter at any moment. Daniel looked at her, his voice low. "You were right. This was only the first storm." She nodded, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "The makers of those beasts will send more. They will not stop. They will burn worlds until nothing is left." Daniel tightened the strap of his rifle and straightened, despite his exhaustion. "Then we don't stop either. We find them, we fight them. Together." Her eyes lingered on him for a long moment. Then she extended her clawed hand, sharp and dangerous, yet offered like a pact. Daniel hesitated only a second before gripping it. Her claws pressed against his skin, cold and strong, but he held firm. From that moment, the hunter and the human were bound. Above them, the stars burned cold and distant. The jungle below smoldered with the remains of the battle. And on the horizon beyond the dark mountains, faint red lights still flickered in the sky, shadows of the war yet to come. But for now, Daniel and Lyra stood side by side, ready. The war was only beginning.